Spencer still plays MX Simulator? What the hell? What's up, my dudes? All right. Just letting you guys know I'm going to be getting back into MX Simulator quite a bit here. The reason why I haven't really been is because I've not really been able to play multiplayer. I've been running off a hotspot. Oh my god, a quad daddy. But I'm going to be getting fixed wireless internet. It's actually quite a new deal. Supposedly supposed to be really good. And the fact that I'm literally right beside one of the towers, it's going to be really good internet once I get it. But once I get that going, I'll be back into playing multiplayer, getting back to live streaming, all that kind of stuff. But that's why I've not really been super into MX Sims. I can't even get online with it right now. So either way, yeah, they're definitely, you can tell, they're definitely starting to get their shit together with this 2021 RF track designs here with these replica Supercross tracks, right? So at the beginning of the season, you guys probably heard me talking a bunch about, oh, they got, you know, track scaling's too small, tracks are too narrow, jumps are too small, you know, all that kind of stuff. You know, main triples are too small. The finish lines were tiny. I'm talking like backyard double like finish lines. I don't know what the heck. Super like low to the ground jumps. Feel like you wasn't even really coming off of the ground. Super bizarre. But you can finally start to tell that RF has realized what the heck they were doing wrong with that, because, you know, with it leading up to Daytona, and then once they got to Daytona, they've just slowly but surely been expanding that scaling, making the tracks a little more wide, making the whoops a little more difficult, making the jumps a little more peaked out, making the main triples a little more, you know, bounce you up in the air, making the finish line just a little bit bigger, making the rhythms just a little bit more complex, more quad opportunities and things like that. You can tell RF has just slowly but surely been doing that all year long. So now we're at a point here where they're starting to get it to a pretty cool level. And this is what I was trying to explain in all those fucking review videos with a bunch of the earlier, you know, tracks in this season, and a bunch of the tracks last year as well. Way too one-to-one scaling, not big enough berms, rolled off whoops, no skill gap to the whoops, you know, whoops. You know, it just, the tracks were just so basic. But they're finally starting to get their shit together here. You got, it's like they've brought the edge back to the tracks that they were so missing in a bunch of those earlier tracks this year. You know, the jumps actually feel like you're jumping up off the ground. They don't feel like hyper one-to-one, super realistic scaling. Let's roll everything off where you're barely coming off the ground. Everything feels more like it should feel on MX Simulator, you know, a little bit bigger scaling than exact real life scaling. The whoops have the edge back to them again, where they feel a little bit scary again, like you could crash on them. There for the longest time, like the past 2 years, the whoops have just been nothing. They've been just hold the gas down, you're going to get through them. Like they've totally been missing that entire whoop skill gap to their tracks for a while now. So finally we're starting to see that come back around. Got some character to this sand section right here. Instead of it just being perfectly smooth, they got some pre-made like little ruddy vibe, you know, stuff in this sand section. Nice little divot down in the dirt, creates like an interesting little kicker right here. So it makes this second double kind of tricky. Like you kind of get a lot of very similar bike, you know, movements through here that you would have seen in this real life Supercross race. You know, a lot of guys was getting out of shape in that little sand section right there. And that does happen on this track here on MX Sim as well, which is really cool. But yeah, this track just fun. Like it's fun again. They're making the tracks fun again now. There's big lines. Quad that shit. Quad, you can do another quad. There's like a quad right there. Then you go around this corner. There's another awesome distance on that triple, and you can quad over both these tables. Like, this is not super unrealistic either. I mean, yeah, you know, in real life, they may not have really been able to jump plumb over this tabletop right here or whatever, but like, it's still in the realm of looking realistic when you look at it in third person or, in the pro race coverage in the game and stuff. It's not like you're jumping some super fantasy ass shit. It's that feels good, bigger line, multiple different line opportunities, bigger whoops. You can tell they're making it more for the gameplay of the game now. Not just trying to make everything as hyper one-to-one scaling realistic as they possibly can. Now everything's starting to feel a little more fun, fits into the gameplay of the game. Kind of gives you a little more room to hold it out around the corners, and everything doesn't feel so cramped down arena cross level scaling. The finish line feels a little bit bigger, and it's not like the main triple in the finish line. God, it's been forever since I've done a backflip. Oh my gosh. I used to be able to backflip on a dime, right? Like super small, like Travis Pastrana backflips, which I still can, but right there, it's been a long time since it can be a little tricky doing those backflips on the backside of a finish line jump there. But yeah, I think I had a couple little mistakes right through here. That's pretty tricky though, man. Being able to get that quad over that table every lap, you got to take it super wide in the corner before. This track in comparison to a lot of their other tracks this year, this one took me a minute to figure out, It took me a minute to get my shit going and actually start hauling ass through these whoops super fast and hit all those big lines clean, and figure out what the heck I was doing in this rhythm right here. There's 1,001 different ways to hit this. You can actually quad that jump right there too, and then do a triple out, but I don't think it's actually faster than cutting up the inside. So you end up doing a little bit smaller of a rhythm, but it's faster in the long run there. But you can hit a bigger quad in the middle of that rhythm as well. But yeah, the finish line just feels more like what would be a Supercross finish line versus some backyard beginner ass, rolled off finish line jump. They're starting to get that peak to everything again, that edge. Like I'm saying, it's not like the distance of things are much farther. It's not like this main Supercross triple. It's not like the distance is much farther, but you can see how the bike, the suspension really compresses when it comes off that jump face and rebounds at the top, right? Really gives you that bounce effect when you come off the jump face. And you got to have skills to control the bike over a jump face like that. You got to have leaning skills in this game to be able to keep the bike from just flipping over backwards or whatever, and that's what gives you more of that Supercross feeling. When they mellow off the jump faces too much, it makes it to where Billy Bob Joe, beginner-ass rider in the game, can jump all the same shit that a pro would be jumping in the game because the jump faces aren't peaked enough. They're too rolled off. The more peaked you make something, just like how a lot of you guys know in real life, you start getting to that certain peaked pitch level to any jump face, and it just starts getting exponentially more difficult to hit if you're an amateur rider or whatever. You start making things more peaked, not necessarily more distance, but more peaked, no matter what it is, jump-wise, and it just gets more and more to where you have to be more and more of a pro level to be able to hit it. Because that peaked type jump face is just so... That's what Supercross is, dog. That's what I've been trying to say about these tracks forever now. They didn't even feel like Supercross. They felt like beginner, amateur, arena cross tracks. That's what a lot of their tracks have felt like to me in this game. But now they're starting to get more of that actual, what I would expect out of the scaling on a 2021 RF Supercross track in this game. This doesn't feel like, steps backwards from scaling in previous years or anything. Like I say, those whoops, when you really get to going fast in them, they're sketch, which is good. That's how whoops are supposed to be. They're supposed to be super difficult. They're not supposed to just be able to hold the gas down and breeze right through them on the first lap. Whoa, Spency boy. You want to be crashing on it like the first 5 to 10 laps on a track. Even at my level in this game, you want to be crashing on it because that tells you that there's depth to the track. Whenever you get on there on a track and you're just automatically first lap on it, hitting everything on it and not crashing at all, that's when you know your scaling's too small. That's when you know you don't have enough skill gap to the base version of the track. And that's how almost every single one of those previous tracks this year have been for me. Obviously minus Daytona, and there's like maybe one or two other ones in there, but a bunch of those ones, a bunch of these Supercross RF tracks from last year, and then a bunch of the tracks this year already were like that. They were just so, like, you weren't even going to crash if you tried. You know what I mean? So now, finally, starting to get that edge back, starting to get the size to the berms again, starting to get the character back to some areas on the track, starting to get the, peak back to the finish lines and shit. So, if I was so wrong about all my track review rant videos over the past 2 years on these Supercross tracks being too one-to-one scaling, too hyper-realistic, everything's too small and easy, and, all you dudes that try to defend RF on that and act like they were doing nothing wrong, well, if they were doing nothing wrong, then why the hell are they now changing it in that exact type of way that I've been talking about over the past 2 years? Why would they be doing that if I was so wrong? Why would they be making the whoops more peaked? Why would they be making the main triples more peaked? Why would they be widening out the tracks more, making more quad rhythm opportunities? Why would they be doing any of that if I was so wrong? I've been right about this shit the whole time. I mean, there's just really no doubt about it. Like, there's so many of you guys, you get caught up, you get lulled up in that amateur type track design, that amateur beginner ass track designs in these games. And RF's been doing a lot of that. And it's a lot of you amateur and beginner dudes in the game. You like those tracks because they're amateur tracks and you're an amateur in the game. That's completely different than making a pro track. Like, if you're an amateur in this game or a beginner, you should, when you get on one of these RF pro Supercross tracks, that shit should feel like too hard. It should feel like too complicated, like you're crashing all over the place as an amateur. That's the way it should feel. Because if you just go throw an amateur in real life on a full-blown AMA level Supercross track, they're going to wad their shit. In the whoops, they're not going to be able to hit the big rhythms. They're not going to be able to do anything. They're going to be crashing everywhere. So when you make these RF Pro Supercross tracks like amateur level, easy scaling, rolled off jump faces, it just kills the whole vibe of it, dude. Like, it makes it to where it doesn't even feel like a pro track anymore. So either way, finally they're starting to get more back to that kind of feeling here. Now it's giving you more of that risk to coming up short. If you come up short on the main triple here, you're going to have way more of a chance of popping off the bike than you would have on a lot of those other main triples this year. Even if you come up short on the finish line, like, it's going to be pretty detrimental. I mean, certainly momentum-wise and time-wise. Even if you come up short on some of these bigger rhythms, like, yeah, you can come up short on this one because it's a table, but it ain't going to be pretty, man. Like, if you get to hauling ass through these whoops and you wreck, like, you're going to be over there in the damn Race Tech banner over there past the whoop section. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to just, like, slowly roll yourself down to a stop like you could have in a bunch of these other whoop sections. So, either way, they're starting to get that whole, like, pro edge back to the tracks that I've been talking about for the past 2 years that they've been missing in these tracks. They're starting to give you that line option, line opportunity, quad rhythm option. It's not, you can tell they're not just purposely trying to restrict you from hitting a quad because it's not realistic. Good God, RF. You ought to be ashamed of yourself for making tracks like that over the past 2 years, because they've never been made like that in this game ever before. This whole, oh, they need to be one-to-one scaling. You can't hit a quad anywhere. Let's roll everything off and make the berms rolled off and the whoops rolled off and the finish lines rolled off and the main triples rolled off. All that shit has just spurted up out of nowhere. I don't know where that's come from, but they have never made tracks like that in this game before. It makes no sense as why you would all of a sudden start trying to make tracks like that. They started that basically after RF shut down and came back, which would have been in like 2019. So 19, 2020, and then 2021. You know, that's kind of when they've tried to start doing all this one-to-one scaling shit. And it's just ridiculous because the tracks have never even been made like that before. Why would you do that? I just feel like a bunch of their tracks, it felt like such a step backwards from the skill gap and the scaling you would have had on like a 17 track or a 14 track for its time, right? You know, you always expect these tracks to kind of expand a little bit every year that you go because the bikes are getting faster, the dynos are getting faster, everybody's skill is getting better. So you've got to expand it every year slightly, or it's going to feel like you're regressing in skill gap and scaling, you know, fun factor and all that kind of stuff. It's going to feel like you're going backwards if you don't expand the scaling every year. Obviously, there's kind of a limit to it, and there's obviously a range there. You don't want to just make every track, you know, 1.7 to 1 scale or 2 to 1 scaling or whatever, but still, that's the general rule of thumb. You know, you don't want to like come out with a new track year in this game and then every bit of the scaling is smaller than it was the year before. You see what I'm saying? You never want to do that because it makes it feel like you're going backwards. But then that's when you can start playing around with interesting stuff like ruts up certain jump faces, ruts in certain corners, pre-made, what I'm talking about. You know, kind of playing around with the pre-made. I think that would really help their case a lot. Yeah, either way, man, appreciate you guys watching all the videos. Difficulty on this track is, I would say it's hard, which is how it should be on a pro Supercross track in the game. If I go in here and say one of your RF pro Supercross tracks difficulty is like easy or medium, then it's not hard enough. It needs to be hard or pastrana, one of the two. Hard is actually the better giggity. Hard difficulty, you know, if like your scale of difficulty is like easy, medium, hard, pastrana would be like next level Spencer Turley super scaling tracks. You know, you don't want it that difficult, but you want it really difficult. You know, you want it like in that hard difficulty range to where amateurs are going to struggle on it. And I don't want to hear you amateurs saying you just blew right through this track, because I know you wasn't hitting these big lines like this. I know you wasn't blowing through those whoops and doing all this, hitting both big lines everywhere. I know you wasn't just doing that real quick. I know you wasn't. You may lie and try to brag about it, or you're running hacks or something like that, but I know you wasn't doing it. I played this game long enough to know what the hell the difficulty is on a track, right? But either way, appreciate you guys watching all the videos. Keep this up, RF. Later, dudes.